Shalom, my name is Liz McGee, and I am back for another inconvenient truth for Ephraim, which would be Christianity today, but it's okay. I think the Father has prepared everyone to quickly receive the truth. Let's integrate it and move on. And I'm talking about Yeshua, Jesus, the Nazorean. And what does that mean? Jesus from Nazareth. So it's not really that there's a town in Nazareth that he came from. It's that he was part of a sect, if you will, which means a group within Judaism at the time, attested to, and I'll read you this from this is from Philo. Like I quoted in the last video, Philo, Josephus, Pliny the Elder. These are many documented historians and people who wrote at the time, and it says that it's documented that there are three philosophical sects among the Jews. This is basically in the time of the 1st century. The followers of the first of whom are the Pharisees, the second are the Sadducees, and the third sect, who hold to a severer discipline, are called Essenes. Now these Essenes are Jews, Judah by birth, and seem to have a greater affection for one another than the other sects have. Such an interesting little innuendos in that quote by Philo. But Yeshua did call many of the Sadducees and the scribes, and so the scribes and the Pharisees would be about the same thing. Now, he agreed with the Pharisees on many points. I want people to understand. I don't ascribe to this doctrine that like all Pharisees are bad. No. Obviously, there would be some wrong thinking among them, and Yeshua obviously corrected that. But if the Sadducees were truly like, I wouldn't even, not legit Jews that are really cared about the spiritual inheritance. Their life is sort of like Esau. He wasn't really interested in the spiritual inheritance of his family line. And these Essenes were I'm sorry, who I'm talking. The Sadducees were the ruling class, and it's documented historically that they were very interbred. They were not, like it said. Why would Philo have to make a point that these were Jews by birth? Okay. Even though within the three groups, these are the group that are Jews by birth, because the Idumeans were a group in the whole history who had come in, who had integrated themselves or with other Jews and had become this third group called Idumeans. And so they were not legitimate birthright Jews per se, but they were a group that had migrated their way up into power by really kind of marrying in and the whole routine. But the point is, but these Essenes, their reputation in all the writings is outstanding, that they truly were, they walked the walk, they talked the talk, they could do miracles, they were healers, they had all this power, and they lived communally. The thing that I have to say is that so with these three groups, and let me just say this, Yeshua called to a large extent the Sadducees and sometimes the scribes in very bad language, and he called them this word hypocritia, which means stage actors, pretenders. And as all these verses in Matthew 15 and 16 and in Matthew 22 and in Matthew Mark 7, Mark 12, all these different places that they have this, they're referred to this way, which has also the implication that they are not legitimate or genuine in a birthright sense. All right, but again, these, as I said before, these Nazarenes or these Essenes, they morphed again into this other group called the Ebionites. So that's what makes it also very confusing, when you try to go back and study all these different groups. But either way, there is another tradition. Let me just find this one here, where they were also their practices. See, if you read the book of Acts, the early Christians were quickly adopting these lifestyles, and it's like, where did this come from? So from extensive research on the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Jewish Essenes, all right, understanding their group, it says in this text that I'm quoting from that they were forerunners to Christianity, and the description of their bathing habits, which would be the mikvahs, which is where you immersion in water, eating practices, their fervent study of the Torah, their commitment to healing, and especially their focus on ritual purity, put them in this special category of the Essenes. Now, also another thing that in the New Testament that we have, this is from Acts 4. It says, neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them and brought the price of the things that were sold and laid them at the apostles' feet. And then you have the story of Ananias and Sapphira. And so like, where does that, what is the context for that? Well, because in these scenes, if you did join this brotherhood, you know, and women, and this is what I did. I don't know if I said this before. I said that there were northern Essenes and southern Essenes. The northern Essenes could marry. Within the larger group of Essenes, you had some that felt that it was a mitzvah to marry, because it is. It says that man must reproduce himself. Every man, it's a mitzvah. You must have children. Conversely, the southern Essenes or other Essenes felt no, they gave up all worldly involvement, and they thought it was a higher order to be purely aesthetic and sort of, you know, married to Yahweh, because the bride and the groom kind of relationship. Hey, I think that's still going on today. Either way, but what I do want to say is that they were wont to sell their possessions and their substance and divide among all according as one had need, so there was not any among them in want. And this is related to in Acts of the Apostles. Now that's written by Eusebius. So there is this connection. For whoever of Christ's disciples were owners of estates or houses, sold them and brought the price thereof and laid them at the apostles' feet. And that's what we see happening in the book of Acts. And distribution was made as every one had need. So Philo relates these things exactly similar of the Essenes. So we have these two witnesses, all right? And again, we have a witness in Acts. So this concept, but see, they did that because they wanted to be able to totally devote themselves to this aesthetic, spiritual lifestyle, contemplation, and, you know, working with your hands for your sustenance, which are sort of the two sides of Torah. We're commanded, mitzvah, to do both, that they could all do that equally. And so they distributed the wealth. And I think that's very beautiful. I mean, to me, but see, this is their communism was, well, it wasn't just that, but you had to also walk the walk. You had to live a godly lifestyle. You had to care about the Torah and the law and the commandments for ethical behavior. They were very high. They had very high standards. Matter of fact, I think you had to be a novice or like for 2 years before they would even give you some of the deeper books and the deeper understandings and things. It was very much character content driven. So that's why they were very rude, and consequently they had a lot of power. They were known as the healers, the therapists. They could get miracles, you know. It's attested to. So this is, to me, and it makes a lot of sense. And you see John the Baptist, who is you know, I see him as this southern Essene. This makes a lot of sense to me because the true orthodoxy from the north, those who are still keeping the festivals, it would have to come down to the south for the 3 pilgrim feasts every year. And you see that with Yeshua. You see that with the disciples, with Mary coming down, all right? Because it was law. They had to. They were good Jews. They didn't have a problem with it. And then he said, and then Yeshua said, like, well, I'll be down, but I'm going to go on my own. Don't look for me. Or the time when Yeshua, when he's 12 years old, right? And they come down, the family, the whole clan. See, because these people, you didn't have your own little minivan. Everybody traveled together in big packs. All right, it was a clan. All right, and they would come down en masse, and so you see, and then they're going home now after the festival. And Yeshua's 12. You know, Mary thinks he's playing with her cousins. He's hanging out. He's fine. And then come to find out that he's not in the group. I can see that happening very easily. All right. And so, I mean, a lot of these nuances begin to take shape because they truly were the ultimate communal, but in the sense that you could trust this was one big family and they all played by the rules, so to speak. But so this is the one thing, though, that's important to understand, because this puts context on their writings, because historically, too, scholars will tell you there were 3 things that kind of made these Essenes stick out a little bit, or that was very different. Again, like I said, they kept these books for the wise. They were majoring, quote unquote, in these deeper, more esoteric. And I want to say this: if you are familiar with the concept of the Zohar and the writings, the Kabbalah, and the story of Rabbi Shimon barYochai and his son, and they went and lived for 13 years in the ground. I mean, with their head. I mean, seriously, that's where they're going to say that that's not a literal thing. They went somewhere. Where did they go? Well, now it's coming out, and a lot of Jewish sages, people at this level will say, yeah, they went down to Qumran. They were hanging out. All these really deep sages, a lot of them were followers of Yeshua. I have heard Jewish Kabbalists say that, yes, Rabbi Shimon was a follower of Yeshua. They all had this understanding, and they were trying to preserve, because, the end was quite imminent. They knew that. So, anyways, it's just, I think when history gets put together, it's going to be quite astounding. But anyways, they had three things in common. Prophecy. They were the ones who became the prophets, and that there would be others who would, like I said, a priest and a king who had the holy anointing could prophesy. But these had a lot of prophets came out of this. Like I said, Samuel came out because they also were able to reach into the level of, quote unquote, a prophecy, which is a very high and exalted, meditative state and closest with the Father. So it's like you're actually in the secret council way up there where it talks about with the other Elohim. So you're there. You're getting the same intel that the angels are getting. All right. That's what it means. But they also have the text of Enoch. They have this older wisdom literature. Enoch, it even says in Jude that he is our patriarch. He is the patriarch of our spiritual understanding. And they also consider us the firstborn. This is why when they said that they believe that they had direct genetic lineage to the priesthood and the king, princely line, they were not kidding, and because that was part of the prophecies promised to the lineage of the firstborn. That's part of the spiritual inheritance, priest and king. They were also highly initiated into true spiritual systems, and this is where people get a little tripped up because I'm sorry, but power, you don't just I don't know how to explain it. It's just too much, but they have. Well, let me put it this way: if you're in a dark age and you have a lot of advanced scientific understanding, and you start operating in it, the people are going to think you're practicing magic. And actually, that's what a lot of it happens. The common man does not understand, but a lot of times in these deeper writings in prophecy, and it's called the SOD level. Understand? It's called the oral Torah. It's Jewish. It's all this wisdom literature. But bottom line, it is this. A lot of times, it's the merger of science and the powers of nature, the secret. See, these people weren't stupid. This is another thing that's coming out. True, that's why it says true science and true spirituality are going to agree in the last days, because it's all coming out how science and the powers of nature are all spoken of accurately in the Torah. And that's what they knew. They knew that. So if they wanted to rebuke the wind or the rain or these things, they knew how to do it. Okay. And I don't think it was hocus pocus. Now, there's another aspect to the writings of the Essenes that they had, which was, and this I have to clear up again. Okay. The names of the angels. This is a phrase that you might come into, but I want to tell you something. And angels, biblically, if we understood what they are, this is like intelligence. It's like threads of God's intelligence. They're called his servants, and he sends them out. But ultimately, we know they're not God. They're not separate from God, but there are intelligences. All right. So that's why I think computer programming, that their levels, they function on levels of sophistication, and there are very high and exalted, quote unquote, angels, because they have a tremendous amount of power and authority sort of within the networking of Yah's creation. But it's all really not talking about, little cherubs. I hate, or even a separate type of entity. It's really God's intelligence, all right? That he kind of, he can't give it to us all at once. So he kind of uses a little thread. He lets you tap into a little vein, So it says a vein of understanding and a thread of gold, of wisdom, okay? So that's what that is. So the names of the angels means they understood high levels of divine intelligence. This is where, Moshe parted the Red Sea. You say, how did, takes a lot of, what did he do? Okay, well, that's not for today, but you should pray, that you get there. Because now there's another whole category they were known for. The keepers, they were also herbal cures. Not only were they able to, and it's documented, there's many documents of miracles, flat out. That's why Yeshua was a miracle worker. He was in the scene. He could walk around and heal people. Okay? And there are many that could of this ilk, but he had a special. But anyways, herbal cures, they kept from the time, and we're told if you read some of the more ancient, even Noah, after the flood, was retaught and God confirmed to him again what properties were in herbs for the healing of nature. This was always kept in literature. And to confirm this is how interesting the Father is. All right, let me just make sure you understand what I'm saying. So, there's two kinds of sides to that story. There's pharmakia, which is a big plant. There is either plant-based healing or there's pharmakia. You can concoct it in a laboratory kind of thing, or you can let nature just do its thing. All right. And it's a big subject, but what I do want to say is that the herbal recipes, the many things we know today, that they're coming back to understanding these things have to be part of healing. But I have a friend, a new, this ministry, Elect Life, we're supporting, and she's supporting us. I hooked up with a great ministry in India, and she's relating different things in her life. She just was in a bad car accident a couple months ago, and then she was talking about her healing and really saved miraculously. It's a great story, she and her daughter. But she kept saying, well, yeah, I'm going for in her treatment, she said, I'm going for my healing, my herbal remedy. I have to go for herbal remedy treatment. And then finally I picked up on it, and I was like, Eva, you are doing really traditional Ayurvedic healing. That's what the doctors, that's what they're doing for you. She said, oh, yes, that's what we do in our country. She said, we don't allow any Western medicine. Okay. Now, I'm sure there are pockets that do, but still, it is so, and it works. And this is what she's doing, and the doctors are prescribing it for her. But let me just tell you, this is what's so interesting. But she lives right in an area where St. Thomas, and this is what they always say, oh, there's a tradition. Well, no, I'm sorry. It's documented. Thomas, one of the disciples, because it says they all went into the known world preaching this new, renewed covenant gospel. Anyways, he went to India and he preached to the people there, and he started a congregation. And lo and behold, here she is 2,000 years later. And she said, yes, I live in the town. She said, I come. And she's Jewish. She found out, a couple generations ago, which is how now she's, coming back to it, understanding, because they had to kind of leave that understanding because of persecution. But here she is, and she's in there is that literal congregation still alive. It's just amazing. Yahweh has watched over his word. He has watched, and there is a remnant of this congregation that St. Thomas started, so to speak, 2,000 years ago. So I think that's pretty astounding, but I think it's just really important to get correct history and just loosen your brain up. Let the inconvenient truths correct. It says Yahweh's gonna make all the crooked places straight, so that we can have one faith, one Lord, one baptism, all these things. Okay, we cannot have two. House divided cannot stand. We're one house. We are all Israel. All right. So I hope that blessed you. Like, share, subscribe, and find a wealth more long treatises on all this at theelectlife.org. Shalom Aleichem. See you in the next video.